Support for Soccer Today is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the Ultimate Man's Hygiene Bundle, the Performance Package. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane Mullins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Friday, July 8th, 2022. I'm Kevin Laramie and I'll be joined by Duane Mullins in just a second. Yes, we are live and we're not having technical difficulties today as other people in the country, but we'll invite you to join our YouTube channel, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to be made aware whenever you're back online that we have uploaded a brand new show. I hope that the Rogers outage doesn't affect you too much. Well, we're good on our end. Duane, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. We haven't thanked Grant for a while, so just thank you, Grant, for today's Friday. That's a real bold throwback there. We used to thank Grant every Friday, TGIF. So thank Grant.
Exactly, because Grant is important in our world, and it's a little callback to Grant Surridge, friend of the podcast who had a few times on the show, which you can subscribe to the podcast everywhere you find your favorite show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and Google Play Podcast Store. Today on the show is the MLS weekend preview, I should say the preview, as we look at Week 19 and what's in store for Major League Soccer's Canadian teams and most American teams too. We'll look at what is at stakes, looking at also the standings for Week 19 to know what might be the big outcome of the weekend, which is branded Rivalry Week, even though there's just a handful of rivalry games. Also, the Canadian Premier League will preview the next 4 games in the CanPL, and we'll look at the standings in the top tier league of Canadian soccer. But Duane, first of all, let's look at Major League Soccer's schedule for Week 19 right now as we look at this great schedule. There's a couple games that are intriguing to me. It is rivalry week. Friday tonight, Philadelphia DC United. Late tonight, LAFC and LA Galaxy. El Tráfico at Bank of California Stadium. That'll be quite an interesting matchup. I did not know there was a rivalry between Vancouver and Minnesota, but I guess there's not. But it's a game of rivalry week. And we will have that game, of course, covered, Vancouver, Minnesota, tonight. Then starts tomorrow at 1 p.m. NYCFC versus New England, followed by a Cascadia Derby, Seattle hosting the Portland Timbers. Charlotte and Nashville will follow. Atlanta, Austin, Cincinnati, New York. That's actually a low-key interesting matchup. Cincinnati has had a very good season, and we'll talk about them a little later. They have one of the hottest players in the league, in Lucho Acosta. He is one of the best passers this season across Major League Soccer in the key passes and, of course, decisive pass statistic. Toronto, San Jose at 7:30 p.m. Saturday also at Stade Saputo, Montreal will host Kansas City in a barbecue theme evening at Stade Saputo. Food should be delicious. Chicago, Columbus, Orlando, Miami, low-key, high-key. I hate that expression. I don't know why I just said it, but low-key, high-key, interesting matchup in the Eastern Conference. Can Miami become a playoff team with the advent of Pozuelo? Will Orlando continue to just maintain their position in the mid-playoff teams, finishing rivalry week with Houston, Dallas, and late Saturday night, Salt Lake and Colorado in the Rocky Mountains Cup tournament.
Yeah, look, couple things. First off, I hate the fact that it's Heineken rivalry week, because why do we need to make fetch happen all the time in this bloody league? Let's just let organic things happen. That said, what I would say is this. They really, really hype up the LA Derby a lot. I, as a advocate of Senior Transit and not having urban sprawl. I'm not going to call it by its preferred funny nickname because it's not funny what happens there. That's destroying our world. But anyway, I'm not going to get preachy. I just did, but I'm not going to get any more preachy. But it's really interesting matchup for the first time I can think in a while because they've either been up or they've been down. They've rarely been kind of equal. And although the Galaxy kind of struggled a little bit, I still think they're a contending team, at least as a dark horse out there. So I'm interested in watching to see how that one plays out, particularly with the results last week, which we sort of saw a role reversal on what we would have expected.
I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking about LA's big victory over Montreal, which we can look at the result of that game? Will it be replicated in the El Tráfico? And will LA Galaxy have a similar game against LAFC? But they're on the road, quote unquote. But Chicharito and Dejan Joveljic may be the hottest player in the league right now. Yes, Vela has a new contract. Yes, Chiellini might be playing his first game late tonight. But I don't think we're going to see Gareth Bale for a couple weeks. He needs time to acclimatize. You don't want to pull a hammy on your first time out. But when we look at this result and the clearances here, and that's what I'll be focused on tonight. I'll have my box score open when I watch El Tráfico getting ready for tomorrow's CF Montreal game. And I will look at the amount of clearances LA will do because that's part of their DNA under Greg Vanney this season.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting one. Chiellini, you mentioned, you talked about him in yesterday's show. I do think he's low-key going to be, to steal your term for the day, low-key going to be a better signing than Bale. Look, I will be pleasantly surprised, I guess, if Gareth Bale is an LAFC player a year from now. I think that he is staying in shape to play in a World Cup, and then he might just walk off into the sunset. They might even have talked about that. Maybe I'm wrong. I know the deal was longer. That could just be an agreement in place.
He'll literally go to the right of the stadium. He'll take Santa Barbara, maybe Rodeo Drive Boulevard, go all the way to Santa Monica Pier, and call it a career.
Yeah, and look, well, and why not? I mean, if you can, why not? Like, who's to blame him? Who but us can judge, or who but him can judge in terms of what's best for him? However, we talked about this with Insigne yesterday in terms of, like, you don't want to, that guy's a plan for 3-4 years. You don't want to rush him out, even if you have a big sellout game planned for next week and you're like, oh, we got to get this happening. Yeah, you got to be careful with them because you got to make him last. Bale, I think you wrap him up, you shoot him with whatever you need to shoot him with, and you shove him out there for as long as you can get any action out of him. Because even at 20 minutes, if he plays at anywhere close to his capabilities, he could be a real difference maker of this team. Look, LAFC is going to be really interesting to watch the rest of the way. I don't think there is any doubt that they have to be not just considered the MLS Cup favorite, they have to be considered the runaway MLS Cup favorite with that talent addition that's coming in right now. But, it doesn't always mesh. MLS is a funny league. I did the numbers a few weeks ago in terms of, like, DPs that hit, and it's like 25% of them fail within a year, right? So it's not a perfect science.
No, and
we'll watch it carefully.
The big signings now, and there's actually a couple of articles regarding to the production of designated player with teams on MLSsoccer.com right now. So a free plug for the league's website. A couple interesting statistical breakdown. That one, the one on expected goals per player, per teams, it's very interesting. But when I look at the schedule for this weekend, and this being the Jazz Festival in Montreal, let's put a little bit of a jazz music in the background. Yes, I will be going to the Jazz Festival probably later tonight. A couple of, to me, when we look at the standings, which we will look in a second, Philly and DC is important for Philly because DC will be playing without Bill Hamid for the next 2 to 3 months. They're already struggling in the league this year. They're already one of the worst teams in the league, and we're going to look at the standings in a second. And for Philly needs a victory to continue to be a contender in the top of the Eastern Conference. When we look, DC United is 13th with 17 points in 16 games played. Yes, they have 3 games in hand with the top of the East in New York, and they're the one team in the league with the least amount of game played. But the points, you need to win them, and they won't have their best player. They don't have a whole lot of goal scoring capability. They're one of the worst team in the league in multiple statistics and categories. DC United 13th with only 17 points is going to struggle, especially without maybe the heart and soul and the best player of this team, Bill Hamid.
Well, certainly he's Mr. DC United at this point, having left and come back to the club. He's clearly dedicated to that club and to the fans there. But DC is a sad story. We've talked about this a lot over the past few years. How, like, when I first started to watch this league back in 2007, there was still kind of the very end of the time when you looked at DC United as one of the big teams in this league. Year after year, they were always successful. In fact, they won the Supporters Shield, I believe, outside of the US Open Cup's the last trophy that they've won in TFC's first season. TFC's been around for a while now, right? So this club has fallen completely into shambles, and that's unfortunate because I think that it was they were the big black machine back in the day under Bruce Arena in those early 90s days, and when I first started to watch this league. Bill Hamid I don't know how to handicap what a keeper means to a team, but I do know, not to make this all Toronto focused, but I do know what it's like to watch a team without good keeping, and it certainly makes a difference. Just a little bit of an error here or there could be the difference between 1 point and 0, or 3 points and 1, and that is a significant situation when you're looking at how tight the East is. Look, any team, we've said this time and time again, we'll repeat it here now, any team can get hot and pull themselves up. No one is out of this yet, but you don't like to see an injury like that. And this is kind of a trend this year in Major League Soccer. You're seeing a lot of injuries, and we'd have to go back and look to see whether there's more than not. But it seems to me, from an anecdotal perspective, that it is. Whether that's just bodies giving out after 2.5 years of weird scheduling, I don't know.
Or maybe just the strain of the schedule this year because of multiple reasons, because of the Olympics, because of the few reasons why the schedule was difficult this year. It's interesting to see, and there's a lot of teams from Kansas City to there's a ton of teams in the league that actually suffered a lot of injuries this year. And it'll be interesting to see if the injuries themselves have been a factor into the failures or success of some teams in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. You mentioned earlier how the Galaxy, how can they continue on their good streak? The same side, or the other side of that coin, the Galaxy beat Montreal 4-0, and Montreal is coming off a very bad loss, the worst loss in MLS this year. And how will Montreal react from that big loss? Montreal is now at home against Kansas City. Kansas City is the worst team in the Western Conference right now, dead last in the Western Conference if we look at the standings. So Montreal has a good opportunity to maybe find a way to get a victory at home, a statement game against a diminished opponent.
Yeah, no, for sure, and they have to bounce back a little bit too, right? That's kind of key to being successful in this league, is to the ability to overcome those losses, because look, they're going to come. It doesn't matter how good you are. You're going to have weeks when things are as close as they are in this league where it's going to kind of go sideways for you. So the mental strength to overcome that is an important consideration, and one that I think gets overlooked a little bit sometimes when we're handicapping these teams that can be consistent, that don't let the lows hit them for long weeks. They're the teams that end up being successful long term in the league. So yeah, absolutely important.
All right, and just looking now at the other Canadian matchup in the league, we have Vancouver late tonight against Minnesota, and Toronto will be playing. I know it's not a rivalry, it's a game that I will have in my second screen. I will have the LA Trafico on the main screen, and the second screen with sound, but will be Vancouver, Minnesota. That's one interesting matchup. And tomorrow, Toronto, San Jose. A chance for Toronto to get a good victory, a good result at home, and to launch the second part of the season, where you have good news one after the other. Hopefully Insigne can just be shown to the crowd once again, and maybe he waves a little bit, and then maybe you have a surprise show up of Criscito and Bernadeschi who appear in the middle of the pitch, just like Sandy Cazorla's unveiling. You put a magician out there and with a big tarp, and you make a little move, and poof, here comes Bernadeschi in the middle of the stadium on the pitch, on the grass, and unveiled another designated player to your fan base. But for Toronto, it's a good way to maybe have a good result at home versus, which is not, it's not easy to say, but a team that might be worse than Toronto.
Yeah. I mean, look, Toronto's. We're not going to get into Toronto right now. We know what they are, but they make mistakes, and that costs them points. I think that they have good play in the games, but regardless, look, the thing is, that game's sold out. So who thinks that we know why it's sold out. people that bought those tickets are complaining now that he's not going to play. And Insigne, buyer beware, right? Like, there's no guarantee that a player plays. I don't have a lot of sympathy because a lot of those people haven't watched a TFC game since about 2018.
Exactly.
So whatever.
You should have known. It's not because it's the first date after the opening of the market that means he's going to be available. Come on. He hasn't played in like a month.
Yeah, even for a run out would have been a lot to ask for this game. So yeah, we'll have him wave to the crowd. Great. And some of them are going to complain about it, whatever. They're really not fans that we're going to stick around long term anyway. So however, we'll, probably debut him in that World Cup game against Vancouver is likely when you'll see them all come in. You're hearing rumors here in Toronto as well that like Michael saying that he does a lot of breaking stuff lately, has suggested today there were 2 or 3 more moves that we have not even heard about that are coming down the pipe. And we've heard the rumor of Marc-Anthony Kaye. That would be certainly interesting. We've heard a rumor of Richie Laryea getting a loan back for the rest of the season because he needs playing time for the World Cup. That also would be something that would be interesting. And those are just 2 examples, and those are rumors that aren't substantiated yet. There's going to be more players coming into this team. It's a deeply flawed team, and it's going to look so much different. I joked to Kevin off air that this is TFC's preseason now. Like, they played a 5-month trial for the young players. Now they're having 2 weeks of preseason, and then August 1st, they're going to start their season. It's an interesting strategy. We'll see if it works.
We'll see if it works. We haven't addressed it, but by the way, Kyle Lauren has moved. He's not with Besiktas anymore. He has moved to Belgium. He was rumored to go to Nottingham Forest, but no, last-minute change. And he's with my favorite club in Belgium, the nightclub, better known as Club Bruges, my favorite nightclub. That's where he has joined. Congratulations to Marc-Anthony Kaye. It's coming. The techno music is here. Club Bruges, Kyle Lauren will score with Dejan Buchanan, a preview of the upcoming World Cup.
Yeah, watch that. And one reason to watch the Zone next year, because we don't have many others. So there you go. You can keep your DAZN strategy or subscription so you can watch the Canadian team in Belgium. It's a good move for him, I think. We kind of wanted to see Kyle maybe tip into the bottom half of the Premier League, but that's more for visibility than anything else. I think it's a good fit for him in Belgium. That might be the ceiling of where he's capable of right now. By choosing this move, this is a Champions League team, a team that's consistently in the European matches. He'll probably start and have a role for them that will allow him to thrive there. It's a good place for him. Kyle, I think, had he been about 3 years younger and came through the system when the CanPL allowed him to maybe break through when he was 16, maybe even 15, you might have seen him at a higher ceiling. But you know what? It's a pretty good career nonetheless. He had that little bit when he had some personal issues, had the DUI down in Florida, got forced the move out of there. Not great, but he had a child, sort of calmed down, matured, and he's started to excel after a couple loan spells. He's been in Belgium before, he's been in Belgium. He did well there before, this is a good opportunity for him.
Exactly, and we hope for the best, and he's going to continue scoring, getting ready for the World Cup. And it's now time to talk about our sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped, the worldwide leader in man's grooming product, trusted by over 4 million men worldwide, has launched recently the Performance Package 4.0 that contains the following. First of all, the great Shed travel bag that is useful to contain all the great goodies from Performance Package 4.0. Once you open the Shed travel bag, of course made of leather, you'll find a ball deodorant, very useful for your post-shave routine, including the ball toner to refresh your preferred areas before a nighttime event. Also, you can, of course, talk about the pièce de résistance, the Lawnmower 4.0, that is equipped with a beautiful light. It is very powerful, waterproof. It has skin guard technology made of ceramic that is extremely useful and protects and prevents nicks and tucks, in my experience, and I found it very useful. You can use it in the shower. It is, of course, waterproof, and it is included in the pièce de résistance, the main part of the Performance Package 4.0. And other part of it is, of course, the boxers that I've been raving about for the last month. Anti-chafing boxers that are extremely useful for athletic people. Like I should say. Athletic people, soccer players, if you like to train, if you like to run, if you like to do a lot of physical activities in your boxers, those are the boxers for you. And of course, the Weed Whacker 4.0 is also included in the Performance Package. It is a tool for your nose and your ear and it is very useful. And you can find all those tools at Manscaped and get them with 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com. That's right, 20% off, free worldwide shipping at with manscaped.com at SOCCERTODAY using that code at checkout. Unlock your confidence and always have the right tool for the job with Manscaped. We'll be right back after this short break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And we're back on Soccer Today as we now take the time to thank the patrons of this show. If you can join the shout out tier at patreon.com/2solitudes. Pierre, Patrick, Martin, Jordan, thank you for your support over the years. It's been extremely useful. Thank you for your efforts, your financial efforts supporting this show, supporting what you love. Sean Richardson, a great teacher that has also been really helpful in this podcast, part of 127 Montreal, one of the supporters group of the CF Montreal. Blue Collar Dan, let's go. Daniel, Dennis, and Glad, we're so glad that you're all with us. And you can join all those great human beings by supporting this show with our Patreon page, and you can subscribe on that at patreon.com/2solitudes. Duane, we've talked about Major League Soccer, and the Canadian Premier League is next. We're now going to break down the upcoming games in the CanPL. It's a full weekend of games in the CanPL, and we'll also look at the standings. Atletico Ottawa continues his surprising run. Pacific FC back to reality, and more. But let's look first of all at the schedule this weekend in the CanPL. We have tonight a game in the GTA, a GTA special, the 450 versus the 905, or should I say 416. York United, Forge FC, 7:30 p.m. Duane at York Lions Stadium. It should be a great game. It's a rivalry game, even though we're not in MLS. York United, Forge FC.
Yeah. Are they still calling it the 905 Derby now that York's trying to lean into the fact that they're in Toronto?
Well, it's the 6. It's the 416 versus the 905. The classic city versus outside the city.
Yeah, if you don't know what I'm referring to, folks, when York United launched, they were York 9, and they tried to represent York Region, which is a suburban region north of Toronto. They since have changed their name, and this year on the strip, there's the CN Tower, which I wasn't aware was in York Region. It's out my door. But anyway, look, that's a good game. Forge, I had said had started to roll, but they've had a little bit of a slip back the last week. York is kind of struggling a little bit. I think the Voyageurs Cup run was hard on them because it's hard to play on two fronts when you're a CanPL team. But the entire league this year has shown up surprise after surprise after surprise, other than Edmonton, which has been lacking.
Hey, they got 2 wins. They got the same amount of wins of York United. Congratulations, FC Edmonton. You're not a laughing stock, at least not to the same level as you were. At least you got a couple wins in, you know?
Yeah, well, to say, if you could finish this game quickly, it's going to be an interesting game if you're in the GTA. Worst place to spend a Friday night, okay? Anyway, but in terms of Edmonton, I'll just spin into Edmonton. They're still defensively fragile. They're still not a really full team, but they have scored a lot of goals. If you look at their last few games, they've been able to at least create. And as I say many, many times in the show, if you can score, you'll get some results. Scoring matters more than defending. Mm-hmm. You need both, but to be good. But if you should focus on getting the ball in the net first, you can do that, you can turn a lot of things around, and good for them for turning around a bit. But they are a step behind. Yeah,
and they're hosting Pacific FC on Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That would be 2 p.m. Edmonton time at Clark Stadium. FC Edmonton versus Pacific FC. Pacific FC 3rd in the league. Edmonton is 8th. Pacific FC has a record of 5 wins, 4 losses, and 5 draws. Edmonton 2-8-4. Moving on to Atletico Ottawa, the second team in the standings with a surprisingly good season. Not that surprising. We did talk about earlier this season the advantage of being and using the system of Atletico Madrid, training in Madrid, having a few players from that system creates a certain amount of familiarity in the system with the manager also, and we're seeing the result on the pitch. They're facing Cavalry, though, the best team in the league. That's a match for the top of the table in the CanPL, and that'll be Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern, prime time at TD Place in Ottawa.
Yeah, no, good matchup. That if you're gonna watch one this week, that's not a bad one to watch. In fact, when you're looking at the Canadian MLS matchups, that might be the best matchup among the Canadian team this week. I would go so far to even say, you can make your own argument there based on your own prejudices and biases, but that should be a nice good matchup. Ottawa, yeah, Kevin said it. It's a system. The coaching was a question under Mista. Some people didn't think necessarily he might not have the full chops. He might have been more of a familiarity hire off the top. The language was an issue, but he certainly the change they made seems to be working. And I think that Ottawa team is going to be pretty consistent in this league moving forward because they have the resources to find players that fit that budget.
And exactly, bargain. Yeah. They're good to find bargains. So they're basically the equivalent of someone who always has Saturday mornings off and can do all the garage sales and get all the deals before everybody else, and then they turn around and they sell it on eBay for a very high profit. That's Atletico Ottawa. Last game this weekend is Sunday in Winnipeg, and it involves Valor versus HFX Wanderers. Let's look at the standings from top to bottom in the Canadian Premier League. Cavalry, with a very cavalry music. You can picture all the soldiers on the horses going down the meadow, the Spruce Meadow, of course. The Spruce Meadows, there's more than one. Cavalry FC, top of the league with 24 points, 7 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws. We have Atletico Ottawa, same amount of points, but 1 more loss, 1 more game played is second. Pacific FC, third with 20 points. Forge, fourth with 17 points, tied with HFX. HFX has more losses, that's why they're fifth. Valor FC, sixth. York United, seventh, and last in the CanPL, but not by much this time, is FC Edmonton. We're now looking at a little closer to midway in the season, heading into the final stretch of the CanPL. What's gonna give? It's gonna be a very interesting matchup. If I had to choose a favorite, if I have to put $2 on BETUS, of course, if I had to choose, I would go with Cavalry as my hands down favorite to be the regular season winners in the CanPL.
Yeah, I'm still going with Forge, but we'll see how this plays out. The depth is just higher. Calvin, we talked about this since the beginning of this league, that there are 2, 1, and 2. Pacific has done some really interesting things to lay claim that maybe they're part of a big 3, but the kind of consistent play, we'll see how they deal with Concacaf when they start playing it. Makes me question it a little bit. Yeah, it's still the big 2 in a lot of ways. That's why there's a Classico within the CanPL. Forget all the rivalries that they try to manufacture. The matchup is Calgary-Hamilton. Yeah. That is the one since the beginning of this league that you look forward to. You circle on the calendar.
Yeah, that's the Manchester United-Liverpool type of matchup back in the day. And of course, if you will, it was kind of.
It's Liverpool City now. But yeah.
Exactly. That's what I mean back in the day. Before we say goodbye for today, I want to bring your attention to the W Championship. It is continuing. It is a great championship, and I look forward to tonight's game between Panama and Canada. That will be the second match day for Canada, and that will be the last 2 match day tonight. Trinidad and Tobago and Costa Rica, and then Panama, Canada. Then last match day of the competition continues. But there was 2 games last night with intriguing results, Duane. They were both in Group A, and we'll look at the standings of this in a minute. But Jamaica, USA, 5-0 win for the USA against Jamaica. But as predicted on this show, Haiti beat Mexico 3-0. A great victory, the biggest victory in the history of Haiti's women program against Mexico. An amazing victory, 3-0. They find themselves with 3 points. Mexico eliminated, dead last of their group, 0 points, -4. Here are your standings. It is a difficult time in Mexican women's soccer internationally, even though their club game is on the up and up.
Yeah, and that's a baffling and confusing situation, because you would think that they would be able to parlay that opportunities that they're creating. Like, they're doing a wonderful job at the club level. No, those are the clubs that are driving that, not the federation. So that makes me wonder whether maybe the federation has some problems when it comes to the women's programming that is not allowing them to perform at the level that you would expect when you look at their club play. But it's an unfortunate situation, because this tournament's a double whammy. You're not only going to be eliminated from the World Cup, you're going to be eliminated from the Olympics too, outright. So this is a team that will basically be playing for nothing for about 3.5 years.
That's clear. At this point, they cannot finish better than third. Or maybe if they're lucky, second. But even then, you can say goodbye to the World Cup. The United States have qualified for the World Cup officially, and there's a way for Canada to qualify if they get to the final. But that's where we stand right now. We can go back to the schedule for tonight, where Canada is playing against Panama. Canada's the odds-on favorite, and there's a turnaround. Monday, Canada plays against Costa Rica. Panama, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Haiti, and USA, Mexico. Mexico ain't winning against the USA, regardless of what they could think of. It's going to be 3 defeats for Mexico in this tournament. They're going to be eliminated basically from international soccer for the next 4 years.
Yeah. Well, because of the 1 year bump, it's only 3, but it's still kind of unfortunate, right? Look, as it relates to Canada, to spin this back a bit more, that Haitian team, and let's try and spin it on the Haitian team for a second too. That's a program that's been building. They won at the U17 level. They eliminated Canada at the under-20 level, to go to a World Cup a couple of years ago. This is the basis of that team came through that. So they're no pushovers. They won together at the youth levels. Now they're doing it at a senior level. They're set up to perhaps go to a World Cup, which I believe would only be the second time in the history of both men's and women's programs in Haiti that they would have qualified for a World Cup. I believe they qualified for the 1982 World Cup. I had looked that up, but I think they qualified for 82 in the men's side. But it's been a long time regardless. And that'd be a wonderful accomplishment for a country that doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't have a lot of resources, and are doing a lot with a little. They're not going to be pushover for Canada. If Canada wins the group, which you'd expect they would likely play Haiti in a crossover. You assume the U.S. beats them in the final group stage, although maybe you shouldn't assume, but you assume.
Yeah.
And if that happens, then that's going to be an important game for Canada, because they're going to need to win it to still maintain their opportunity to qualify outright for the Olympics with a win over the U.S., which is something that, as the defending gold medal champions, you'd hope you get back there to defend your gold.
No, exactly. And that will be, of course, what we follow this weekend on top of the Canadian Premier League and on top of Major League Soccer's Week 19. And we'll be back next week to break it all down on Monday from the Canadian perspective, from the W Championship, CanPL, and, of course, MLS. Until then, thank you for subscribing to our YouTube page. It helps us a lot. It helps the algorithm. We've seen an uptick of growth of our YouTube numbers with the advent of better graphics and better production value, and we appreciate all the comments that we've been given and we've been receiving over the last few weeks. If you want to subscribe to this show, you can do it, of course, via podcast. It's available everywhere you find your favorite podcast. And for the last time, make sure that if you are wanting to support the show, you can do so for the weekend. It won't work next week, but right now, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com. Do it now, do it today, or it'll be too late. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com. Unlock your confidence and always have the right tool for the job with Manscaped. But as always, until next time, for Duane Rollins, I'm CAVALRY. We wish you a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.